Most buyer personas suck, and chances are it's hurting your marketing. You typically have a quirky name like Marketing Mark, and he has information like 28 years old, married with 2 kids, makes about $89,000 a year. And if your buyer persona looks something like this, stop. Okay, marketing campaigns you've spent weeks pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into could fall flat because of a buyer persona like that. How, you might ask? In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 reasons why most buyer personas and how you can make one that's useful and helps you win more business. Before I continue, I want to make sure you smash the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you don't miss videos that will help you power up your marketing. So, what's wrong with a buyer persona like this? Well, can you spot it? Maybe not, but let me point out 5 things why this is not that great. First, most buyer personas are based on fiction. It's something marketers make up in their heads based on the customers that they want. It's not based on data, research, and interviews, so it leads to a lot of guessing and a document full of assumptions and generalizations. Warwick Alcord highlights this problem with a buyer persona. He created a person with details like male, born in 1948, raised in UK, married twice. Now, these attributes can apply to Prince Charles or Ozzy Osbourne, and you can have 2 people who are so different that fit this persona. Buyer personas often become a fictional representation of the type of customers you want. They should actually represent which customers your product is speaking to the most. So what's the solution? If you want your persona to be more actionable, you must have relevant data. And I'm not just talking about going to Google Analytics and looking it up, because those things can only tell you what your customers are doing and not why. If you want to know why your customers buy or churn, then you have to go to the source, your customers. You want to focus on the M&M of buyer psychology, mindset, and motivation. You want to ask things like what was happening in their lives that triggered them to seek a new solution, why did they pick your product, and what are their goals. When you're able to understand a person to the point where you know both what their motivation is and their level of urgency in that motivation, you can create content that better shows you how you can solve their problems.
And the core emotions, of course, for any marketer is what you want to be pushing on. That's what you want to get to. That's what you want to understand. Those are the insights that allow you to create content that is helpful or funny or entertaining or whatever you're trying for your content to be. It really does give you the information necessary to have the stuff that resonates. Like we said earlier, it's basically the key to understanding who and why your buyers are.
Before we go to the next point, I just want to encourage you to sign up for the weekly newsletter, Marketing Powerups. Share the technique that world-class marketers use to hit the KPIs consistently and wow their colleagues. Go to marketingpowerups.com to subscribe now, and it's completely free. Second, most buyer personas are too focused on the buyer and not the buying decision. Most personas I've seen have uses information like age, gender, marital status. These attributes don't actually give you insights into the buying process, which is a huge piece of the puzzle to make buyer personas more useful. Most buyer personas don't answer critical questions like, how do their typical day go? What do their problems look like and feel like? How do they approach solving those problems? And what would make their life easier? And could your product help them? That's where Adrian's 4 R's of the best buyer persona come in.
So especially for B2B, one of the things that I like to include is what I call the 4 R's. So you want to know their relationship, their responsibilities, their rituals, and their routines.
First is the relationships. Those are how the buyer relates to other people involved in the buying process, which could be the buyer's boss or it could be even the buyer's spouse. Second are the responsibilities. Those are the goals and day-to-day tasks that the buyer performs. Third is the rituals. Those are what the buyer's day looks like. What news or content do they consume? And then number 4, routines. Those are the process or steps the buyer takes to purchase a product or service like yours. These 4 R's should help you give a holistic view of your buyer and making sure that your buyer persona is more actionable. Number 3 is most buyer personas create bias in your marketing. Some think that adding a name, gender, or photo makes a persona more relatable and realistic. By generalizing your ideal buyer as being a male marketer who is in their 30s, you can end up creating campaigns skewed towards those biases. Adrian, founder of Best Buyer Persona, shares in the episode 7 of Marketing Powerups show, this is the main reason why most buyer personas create bias in the marketing.
And the reason it creates bias is because it's you have basically assigned your entire persona to a 28-year-old white female, maybe who has these kind of traits, then you automatically create all content, all marketing, all products, everything for a 28 white female. When we know that your entire audience of consumers are not 28-year-old white females, and I don't really feel like those demographic type information do a good job of creating personas.
So what's the solution? You gotta leave out unnecessary information in your buyer persona, such as age, name, gender, marital status, and even a photo. Not every customer who is a founder or C-suite executive will look the same. Sure, they might have similar pain points, but you don't need to assign a fake stock photo to give you an idea who you're talking to. Instead of having a name for your persona, like Mark, the marketer, much better approach is describing your buyer personas based on a common pain point or motivation. For example, a shoe brand, typical buyer persona could be the fashionista. Those are people who want to wear the latest and most chic clothes. That's definitely not me. That's totally different from a buyer persona that's the value buyer who might care more about price than wearing the most fashionable clothes. That's me. Number 4, most buyer personas don't explain why people buy a product or service. Character traits such as brands people like or habits they have and job titles do not explain why people buy a product or service. For example, say you have a persona, Emily the engineer who loves puzzles, drinks Red Bull energy drink for breakfast, and works late into the night. Is that why she purchases GitHub to host, manage, and track changes to her code? Of course not. The solution here, segment your buyer persona according to the jobs to be done. What did they hire your product or service to do for them? For example, Emily the engineer loves Suave deodorant. She doesn't buy it because of her age, job title, or hobbies. It's because she loves the smell and makes her feel good after a long day working. Similarly, doing customer interviews to identify your product's jobs to be done can help you build more actionable buyer personas. To learn more about jobs to be done, one of the resources I love is Alan Clement's book, When Coffee and Kale Compete. Before we jump to the last point, I want to make sure you download the free persona template based on Adrian Barnes' tips. You can get it at marketingpowerups.com, and it's episode number 7 to get it for free. Number 5 is most buyer personas are created and forgotten. If you've been in any marketing for any length of time, it's likely that you've already created your buyer personas. Maybe they're effective, maybe they're not, but chances are it's been longer than 6 months and you need to revisit them. Data changes, trends fade, and buying habits evolve as technology advances. It's important that your buyer persona take these changes into account, or else your buyer persona becomes outdated and ineffective. The solution, after the initial buyer persona creation, put a recurring meeting on your calendar to review them every 6 months. Keep track of any important changes within the industry, your company, or your product, and buying motivators. When it comes time to review, ensure your personas reflect those changes. After all, your customers aren't static, and neither are your buyer personas. Don't treat them as such. Well, that's all for now. Let me know in the comments if you've ever created a buyer persona before. How was that process? Again, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. That's all for now. This is Rami John from Marketing Powerups. Bye.